Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the chill mists curling over Mount Olympus, where dawn is just a pale smear along the horizon. You're perched on a smooth marble step beside a colossal column, toes curling against the cold stone, as you watch Zeus himself stir from slumber. His golden hair gleams faintly in the first light, and his brow furrows with dreams that refuse to release him. A low thunder rumbles somewhere beyond the peaks. Even gods aren't morning people, apparently. You blink sleepily, wondering how it feels to wake up every day knowing you rule the heavens, earth, and everything in between, except maybe Hera's temper. A gentle breeze carries the crisp scent of mountain pine and distant sea spray. Zeus sits up on his vast bronze throne, rubbing a hand over his beard as his eyes scan the waking world below. You follow his gaze down to the villages still wrapped in darkness, smoke rising lazily from dying hearth fires, farmers tossing and turning on straw pallets. Somewhere down there is his next adventure, his next conquest, his next quiet scandal for poets to immortalize. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and post your location and what time it is where you're listening tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You notice Zeus rolling his massive shoulders with a crack like shifting boulders. His robes shimmer with golden threads as he rises, the hem brushing the mist curling around his ankles. Historians still argue whether Zeus's Olympian garments were believed to be woven from actual clouds, or if this was poetic exaggeration to make him seem larger than life. Either way, they flow around his broad frame as if the air itself obeys his mood. He walks towards the edge of Olympus, peering down with a thoughtful squint. You catch a flicker of amusement in his storm-gray eyes. Perhaps he's scanning for the next beautiful maiden to dazzle, or maybe he's merely admiring his handiwork, the sprawling world below blooming green in early spring light. A crow flaps past his head, cawing harshly, and he flicks a finger, sending it spinning into a lazy spiral down the cliff face. Even gods find alarm clocks annoying. You sigh, feeling the damp dawn breeze ruffle your hair, and stretch your arms overhead, bones popping in sleepy protest. The marble is cold beneath your thighs, and for a fleeting moment, you envy mortals their soft beds and warm fires. But then again, mortals can't watch Zeus in his silent morning rituals, can't hear the faint hum of power vibrating through the very mountain beneath you like a heartbeat. As he scans the mortal realm, a small smile curls his lips. He raises one hand slowly, and light begins to pulse between his fingertips, faint blue sparks crackling like static in dry winter air. You flinch instinctively. This is the hand that hurled thunderbolts against titans, that burned armies to ash, that lifted kings to glory and dashed them down again with equal indifference. A god's moods are as fleeting as dawn fog. Modern historians still debate whether these early myths of Zeus were shaped primarily by political unification needs, tribal chieftains weaving their deities into a single father god to cement shared rule, or if they emerged naturally from shepherds hearing thunder rumble across rocky hills. Either way, what rises before you now is a creature beyond comprehension, father, tyrant, protector, seducer, judge, and secret keeper of countless mortal dreams. You wonder what Hera thinks as he surveys his next escapade. Probably nothing polite. She's likely curled up in her own chamber, draped in peacock feather blankets, lips pressed tight in stubborn sleep, already knowing he will slip away today. Poor Hera. Poor mortals. Lucky you, though, sitting unseen in the quiet golden haze of Olympus dawn, watching the universe rearrange itself beneath one god's shifting desire. He closes his eyes, takes a long, slow breath, and the thunder quiets to a sleepy murmur far in the east. The mountain birds begin their morning chorus, unaware their king is awake and plotting. His eyes flick open, glowing faintly with something mischievous and restless. Today, he thinks, he will become something else. An eagle, a bull, golden rain, a swan, whatever it takes to slip past mortal barriers and satisfy immortal longing. As he turns away from the edge, robes whispering against polished marble, you sense the first flicker of his transformation coming. Your heart thuds gently with anticipation. Another disguise, another myth to be born before your eyes. You settle deeper onto your cold step, curling your toes under your robe's hem for warmth, and prepare to follow Zeus down from Olympus into the waking world below. Because today, it seems, you will witness a god shape-shift his way into mortal hearts once again. Zeus's footsteps echo softly against the polished marble floor as you rise and follow him through the drifting clouds that drape Olympus like a silken cloak. The wind at this height tastes sharp, almost electric, like a hint of thunder waiting to break free. You keep your distance, careful not to startle him, as if a god could ever truly be surprised. He pauses at the cliff's edge where the cold air rushes up to meet him. With a slow exhale, he stretches his arms wide, palms lifting toward the sky. His bones crack like distant lightning, joints shifting as sinew and flesh melt into something altogether wilder. Feathers burst from his shoulders in a rustling cascade, dark and glossy as midnight. His feet curl inward, bones snapping, lengthening, claws sprouting in place of toes. A shudder rolls through his frame, half human, half bird, before his face sharpens, beak forming where once was a regal nose. In seconds, Zeus is no longer a towering king in robes. He's an eagle, vast wings spread wider than a chariot is long, feathers bristling against the dawn wind. Historians still argue whether these animal forms in Greek myth were poetic metaphors for nature's dominion or genuine beliefs in shape-shifting deities swooping low over unsuspecting shepherds. Right now, under the curling dawn mist, you'd swear you're seeing raw power clothed in feathers. He leaps from the cliff with one mighty push. The marble quakes beneath your bare feet as he vanishes into the void below. You hurry to the edge and watch as he wheels effortlessly through the sky, each beat of his wings scattering small storms along the mountain slopes. Somewhere below, the first shepherds are likely tugging rough cloaks tighter around their shoulders, glancing up to see that great dark shadow drifting overhead. A blessing, maybe. Or a warning. Zeus's eagle form rides the rising thermals, scanning the land stretched far beneath him, patchwork fields dotted with olive groves, sleepy whitewashed villages clustered around flickering hearths. You squint, trying to see through his eyes, a lone king pacing his courtyard, restless with dreams of expanding borders, a queen brushing sleep-tangled hair from her shoulders, already weighed down by the coming day's demands. All of them so small from this height. So temptingly mortal. A sudden shift of wind lifts you off your toes for a heartbeat, and you imagine what it must feel like to be weightless like him, free of Olympus's golden walls, of Hera's watchful eyes, free even of his own thunderous reputation. Just talons and wind and instinct. Some scholars still wonder whether ancient Greeks saw the eagle as Zeus's true essence, a predator king who rules because none dare challenge his wingspan or the dagger curve of his beak. Below, a shepherd boy tosses a crust of stale bread to a stray dog, then tilts his head skyward. He catches sight of the eagle drifting above, his mouth falling open in a silent prayer for rain or good fortune. Zeus tilts a wing, banking low over the grazing goats, his shadow rippling across the scrubby grass. The boy's dog barks wildly at the sky, hackles raised, and you can't help but grin. Even the bravest hounds know to fear the shape of a hunting god overhead. You drift after Zeus as he soars eastward, wings slicing the dawn like blades through silk. The sea glimmers on the horizon, a smudge of gold and blue, waves stilling under the eagle's passing gaze. He cries out once, a piercing scream that splits the hush of morning. Some say an eagle's cry is the call of authority, a voice to hush the forest and command the mountain peaks to bow. Others whisper that the sound is an omen, when Zeus shrieks, change is coming. Below, your eyes catch a figure pacing alone on a palace balcony, a king half mad with ambition, or perhaps a queen sighing at the boundaries of her lonely garden. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the thrill rising in Zeus's breast, feathers shivering with the promise of mischief. He folds his wings and plummets, talons tucked tight, the wind howling past your ears like 1,000 rushing prayers. For a heartbeat, you swear you're falling too, your stomach lurching as the earth leaps up to meet you both. And just before impact, he snaps wide his wings, drifting gently toward the palace's tiled rooftop. He lands with barely a whisper, talons curling around sun-warmed clay. He ruffles his feathers, tilts his head, watching, waiting, plotting. The figure below has no idea that the king of Olympus crouches just above, waiting to slip inside hearts and histories alike. One more disguise, one more mortal to make his own. A mouse scuttles across the tiles, freezing as it meets Zeus's glittering eagle eye. For a breathless moment, you half expect him to snap it up. After all, even a god might indulge in breakfast on the hunt. But he simply flicks a wing, and the mouse scurries down a drainpipe, tail flicking like a whip. Not today, little one. You feel a breeze stir the feathers beneath your invisible feet as Zeus scans the courtyard again. The game has begun. He has chosen this palace, this mortal, this story to weave into his endless tapestry of thunder and temptation. And you, perched alongside the mightiest bird in myth, brace for the next shift. Because with Zeus, the hunt is never just about the form, it's about the chase, the conquest, the story that lingers centuries after feathers fall from the sky. Historians still argue whether Zeus's eagle was meant to inspire fear or awe, or both. You decide it doesn't really matter. He is the wind and the wing, the hunter and the king. And as the first sunbeam slices through the clouds to gild his feathers in molten gold, you know this is only the beginning of today's many faces. The eagle feathers drift away like forgotten dreams as Zeus lands lightly upon the palace roof, his form already shifting under the first warmth of morning sun. You watch, perched quietly beside a chimney pot, as his wings shrink inward, feathers melting back into flesh. His talons curl and reshape into long, elegant fingers. His beak softens and folds in on itself until lips appear, full, pink, and smiling faintly with anticipation. The god straightens, brushing stray feather wisps from his bare shoulders. Where once stood an eagle, now stands a shepherd, a young man with tousled dark hair, sun-bronzed skin, and robes slung carelessly over one sculpted shoulder. His sandals look worn by endless miles of mountain paths, and a thin carved staff rests against his palm. Zeus tilts his head, testing the feel of mortal neck muscles, rolling his shoulders with easy grace. He grins at you, eyes glittering with wry amusement, as if to say, "Try keeping up with me now." You follow as he picks his way down an inner stairwell, bare feet silent against cool stone steps. The scent of baked bread and drying herbs curls through the halls. In the courtyard below, servants hurry to and fro, carrying baskets of figs, amphorae of olive oil, and folded linen sheets. No one looks up. To them, he is just another passing shepherd come to trade fresh cheeses for oil or sell fleece for a handful of coins. Historians still argue whether these myths of Zeus's transformations reflected genuine rural encounters with wandering strangers or simply served to warn maidens against mysterious men arriving unannounced at their gates. Either way, you sense the hush that falls as he enters the wide courtyard. Birds flutter from fig branches overhead, feathers raining down like blessings or warnings. A goat bleats at him from a shaded pen, tugging at its rope to sniff the hem of his robes. Zeus chuckles softly, scratching behind its ears with practiced ease. You notice his fingers still carry faint golden sparks beneath the nails, a hidden flicker of Olympus refusing to fully disappear. He notices you watching and raises one eyebrow in mock rebuke, as if to say, "I may look like a shepherd, but power never truly leaves me." He walks to the stone well in the courtyard center, leaning his staff against its rim, then bends to scoop a palmful of cool water to his lips. You can't help noticing how perfectly the morning light catches his face, cheekbones carved like marble, eyes crinkled at the corners with sleepy mirth. A mortal woman crosses the yard, her clay jar balanced on her hip. She slows her steps, eyes lingering on him with cautious curiosity. His smile turns gentle, soft as lamb's wool, and he inclines his head in quiet greeting. Historians still debate whether Zeus's seductions were always forced or if he sometimes won hearts by sheer charm alone. Some versions of the myths insist his power compelled devotion. Others suggest he was simply irresistible. Right now, watching him tilt his head with shy shepherd boy humility, you suspect he knows exactly how to wield either approach as the moment demands. He watches the woman vanish through an archway, then scoops another drink from the well. Droplets glisten on his lips before dripping down to dampen the thin wool of his tunic. For a heartbeat, you see the thunder lurking behind his mortal eyes. He inhales deeply, chest expanding, as if scenting the air for someone specific, someone this disguise was crafted for. A house cat winds around his ankles, purring so loudly you half expect it to explode. Zeus bends to scratch under its chin, his shepherd's staff clacking softly against the stone well as he shifts. The cat arches with bliss before darting off to chase a fly near the olive press. Zeus chuckles, shaking his head. Even mortals' animals are easily pleased, he mutters under his breath. A breeze rustles the courtyard herbs, bay, oregano, thyme, mixing their sharp scents into the morning air. You notice how he breathes it all in with deliberate slowness, nostrils flaring slightly. Perhaps it's a reminder that he is here, that this moment is real despite his divine essence thrumming just beneath the thin wool of his disguise. Some scholars claim gods walked among mortals only to taste these fleeting sensory pleasures: warm bread, sunlit stone, the musk of goats and rosemary in a quiet courtyard. Zeus rolls his shoulders again, as though readjusting to mortal weight and gravity. His shepherd's crook gleams faintly in the sun. You spot a carved spiral near its tip, almost like a hidden lightning bolt motif, his own secret joke, a reminder of who wields thunder beyond these walls. He lifts the staff and twirls it once before setting off across the courtyard, sandals slapping softly against the stone. His gait is easy, loose-hipped, confident without arrogance. He looks back over his shoulder at you, smirking. Don't fall behind, his eyes seem to say. We have hearts to steel today. Historians still argue whether these shape-shifting tales were meant to frighten young women into obedience or simply explain mysterious births of demigods scattered across Greece. But as Zeus disappears through the shadowed archway, leaving only the echo of his footfalls and the faint scent of storm-charged air behind him, you realize one truth: it was never just about conquest. It was about the thrill of disguise, of donning human skin like a new cloak, and slipping unseen into a world that never stops longing for the gods to notice them. And as you follow him deeper into the palace halls, into the quiet corners where love and fate braid themselves into tangled stories, you sense his excitement shimmering in the charged silence. This shepherd's journey is only beginning. Tomorrow, he might return to eagle feathers or thunder clouds, but today, he walks with mortal feet, and every step echoes with the promise of another stolen heart. Zeus moves down the narrow corridor with the silent grace of a man who belongs everywhere. You follow a half-step behind, feeling the cool flagstones through your bare feet as shadows slip across the walls. Oil lamps flicker from their iron brackets, illuminating painted scenes of gods and heroes, images that would fall trembling to their knees if they realized the true king of Olympus walked these halls disguised as a dusty shepherd boy. At the far end, muted voices drift from an open doorway. Zeus pauses, adjusting his woolen tunic over one shoulder. His fingers toy absently with the staff at his side. You sense him summoning something deeper within himself, a gentle stillness that masks the pulsing force beneath his skin. Historians still argue whether these mortal disguises dulled his divine instincts or heightened them with the thrill of danger. Watching him now, you suspect every nerve is sharper than a drawn blade. He steps into the doorway, and the room hushes instantly. Inside, a noble family reclines around a low cedar table piled with steaming dishes of lentils, barley cakes, and roasted figs. A thin trail of incense curls from a bronze dish by the window, leaving the air heady with frankincense and myrrh. All eyes turn to the newcomer, the slender shepherd with rough-woven robes, olive-dark skin, and hair tousled by the mountain wind. "Forgive me," he says softly, his voice low and melodic like a reed flute over quiet waters. "I bring a small offering of goat cheese, from slopes where thyme grows wild." He lifts a wicker basket from his hip, tilting it so creamy rounds of cheese catch the lamplight. A servant scurries to take it, bowing quickly before retreating to the kitchens. The lord of the house inclines his head, studying Zeus with guarded curiosity. The lady beside him rests her slender fingers against her lips, eyes lingering on the shepherd's gentle smile. Zeus dips his head in humble gratitude, though you catch the flicker of triumph in his eyes. The game is unfolding exactly as he planned. He kneels near the hearth, settling onto a cushion offered by a young boy with copper curls. The child gazes at him with wide-eyed wonder. Zeus ruffles his hair softly. "You have the look of a lion cub," he whispers, and the boy beams before scuttling back to his mother's side. The lady of the house laughs lightly at her son's delight, her gaze returning again and again to the shepherd with something like yearning stirring beneath her careful composure. Historians still debate whether Greek households truly welcomed strangers so freely or if mythic tales of Xenia, sacred guest friendship, were ideals rather than everyday reality. Regardless, you sense an ancient script unfolding here, as old as the gods themselves, the weary traveler, the offered food, the quiet temptation of possibility. Zeus accepts a clay cup of watered wine, cradling it in his hands as if it were spun from moonlight. He inhales its sharp earthy scent before sipping, eyes drifting shut in bliss. "Your vineyard tends fine fruit," he murmurs. The Lord chuckles at the praise, fingers drumming against his knee with pleased pride. The lady smiles, brushing a stray curl behind her ear, though her gaze remains locked upon the shepherd's serene, sun-kissed face. Outside, the cicadas begin their rhythmic chant as dusk falls over tiled rooftops and olive groves beyond. You hear pottery clink in distant kitchens, the splash of water as servants wash bowls, the rustle of goats being herded into stone pens for the night. And here, in this quiet lamplit room, Zeus basks in their mortal domesticity as though it were a sweet perfume crafted only for him. A slave girl enters carrying fresh figs drizzled with honey, her ankles jingling with tiny bronze bells. As she passes, Zeus lifts a hand to steady her tray, his fingertips brushing her wrist. She startles, eyes flicking up to his, and for a moment her breath catches. His smile is gentle, warm, entirely human, but you sense the current running beneath, that divine pulse vibrating through each touch and gaze. He tears a fig apart with calloused shepherd's fingers, offering half to the lady across from him. She hesitates only a heartbeat before leaning forward to accept it, her lips brushing the fruit where his fingers had been. Color rises to her cheeks as she lowers her gaze, lashes trembling against her skin. Historians still argue whether women in these myths were willing or simply resigned to divine fate. Watching her now, it is impossible to tell. All you see is the trembling spark of want flickering in her chest. Zeus sits back on his cushion, sipping wine, his eyes half-lidded with satisfaction. The lamplight gilds his cheekbones, outlining the faint dimple in his chin as he smiles at private thoughts. The conversation around him resumes in cautious trickles, trade prices, wine harvests, new goats born in the high meadows. But every few moments, a silent glance drifts back to the quiet shepherd with storm-cloud eyes and the scent of time clinging to his robes. He leans against the stone hearth, one knee raised, wrist draped lazily across it, looking for all the world like a traveling musician resting after a long climb. But beneath that easy posture coils the king of Olympus, the father of gods and men, the wielder of thunder who can crumble palace walls with a flick of his wrist. You see him watching the flickering flames with a small, secret smile. And you realize that for Zeus, these stolen evenings in mortal halls were never about mere hunger or desire. They were about dominion, the knowledge that no door could bar him, no vow could bind him, no world existed where he was not supreme. He sips his wine, warm lamplight catching in the dark whirlpool of his eyes, and you sense his thoughts turning to tomorrow's transformation, and the next disguise, and the next trembling mortal heart that will beat only for him. The next morning arrives in a hush of dawn mist curling through olive groves, softening the harsh stones of mortal life into a gentle dreamscape. You follow Zeus as he walks away from the noble house, his shepherd staff tapping lightly against the rocky path. Birds begin their sleepy chirp in cypress branches overhead, a simple chorus to accompany the king of gods on his silent departure. His tunic clings to his shoulders, damp with early dew. A sly smile tugs at the corner of his lips as he stretches his arms wide, rolling his neck until it cracks softly. Well, He murmurs to the sky, "That was pleasant." You can't help snorting at his understatement. Pleasant, indeed. Last night subtle glances, trembling hands, and wine-slicked figs passed from his fingers to hers, just another quiet conquest stitched into his ever-growing tapestry of mortal liaisons. Historians still argue whether Zeus's seductions were acts of pure lust or complex demonstrations of divine power. Some say each disguise allowed him to circumvent destiny, others believe it was his duty to seed future heroes across the world. But this morning, as he leans against an ancient olive tree, face tilted up to catch the pale dawn light, he looks merely satisfied in a sleepy, sated way. He rubs his chin thoughtfully. "Today," he says softly, "I feel like feathers." You blink, startled. "Feathers?" He glances at you sidelong, eyes glimmering with mischief. "Watch," he whispers. And before your gaze, the broad-shouldered shepherd melts away, skin rippling into white and gold, bones thinning, spine folding inward as wings unfurl with a faint rush of wind. There stands Zeus transformed, a radiant swan preening its feathers, the early sun gilding its sleek neck in liquid gold. Its black eyes gleam with knowing intelligence far beyond any mortal bird. With one elegant stretch of his wings, he launches into the dawn air, powerful beats sending tiny olive leaves fluttering down around you like confetti. Historians still debate whether the tale of Leda and the swan was metaphor, myth, or dark memory twisted by time. Some argue the swan represented kingship, others call it the sun god symbol. But here, as you watch Zeus glide in slow, majestic circles above the silver-green trees, it feels achingly real. He lands silently by a quiet riverbank, wings folding with regal precision. The reeds sway in the breeze, their tips whispering against each other like gossiping maidens. There, by the water's edge, kneels Leda, queen of Sparta, daughter of Theseus, her hair dark as ripe olives, braided with tiny bronze beads that catch the morning light. She dips a clay jug into the river, muscles in her forearms flexing delicately as she lifts it. Droplets slide down her sun-browned skin, catching in the fine hairs along her wrist. She hums under her breath, a tune about threading wool, you realize, and her lips curve faintly as she pours fresh water into a wide bronze basin beside her. Zeus approaches with slow, deliberate steps, webbed feet making only the faintest crunch against damp sand. The swan's wings arch gracefully, feathers glowing white gold in the rising sun. Leda glances up, startled. For a moment she simply stares, caught by the sudden beauty of this creature, so out of place yet perfect against the soft blue of morning shadows. She smiles, small and wistful, reaching out with tentative fingers. "Where did you come from, little king?" she whispers, brushing her fingertips along the curve of his ivory beak. He bows his head beneath her touch, and you see his eyes close in gentle triumph. The swan nestles against her lap, pressing the soft down of its breast to her linen robes. She laughs lightly, stroking his neck with the careful tenderness one gives a skittish fawn. Historians still argue whether Zeus charmed her or forced her, whether his transformation was divine seduction or predatory trick. Some say she bore twins, Helen of Troy, the world's doom-bringer, and Clytemnestra, vengeance incarnate. Others claim she laid eggs like a swan herself, birthing legends in white shells. But in this quiet dawn moment, Leda knows only the warmth of soft feathers, the weight of a living god resting trustingly in her lap. You watch as he nuzzles her palm with his beak, the river flowing quietly behind them, reeds swaying in rhythm with her gentle stroking. For a flicker of a heartbeat, you think you see her eyes darken with something more than wonder, a deep, thrumming understanding that this swan is not merely bird but king, god, force of nature incarnate. Zeus lifts his head, golden eyes glimmering with secrets. The breeze rustles the reeds, the morning sun spills across the quiet riverbank, and Leda hums her wool-threading song once more, as if nothing in the world has changed. Yet within her lap sits the father of thunderbolts, the weaver of fate's tangled tapestry, disguised in feathered silence to win a queen's yielding heart. The sun climbs higher, gilding the land in early brilliance. Zeus folds his wings tighter against his body, his beak dipping once more into her open palm as if to say, "You are mine," though you may never know it. And far above, a lone heron drifts across the pale sky, its silent flight echoing the quiet truth that in every dawn lies a secret, and in every god lies a longing to be loved in forms beyond their true immortal shape. The sun climbs higher into a cloudless sky, warmth slowly banishing the morning chill as you follow Zeus in his silent departure from Leda's riverbank. He strides away in human form again, each step pressing deep into the damp sand, his footprints quickly swallowed by the lapping river water behind him. His brow is furrowed, his eyes distant with half-formed plans for his next disguise. Historians still argue whether Zeus's constant transformations revealed his insecurities or merely showcased his boundless creativity. Was he bored with Olympus' perfection, seeking mortal imperfections to delight him? Or was each change a necessity to bypass fate's unyielding grip on gods and men alike? He walks up a winding shepherd's path away from the river, olive branches brushing against his arms, silver-green leaves whispering with each breeze. The world smells of sun-warmed rock and fresh sheep dung, not exactly divine, but grounding in a strangely comforting way. You notice he no longer carries his shepherd's staff or wears his broad wool cloak. His form shimmers, bones and sinew melting into something leaner, his hair paling into honey-gold waves. At a small stone fountain by the roadside sits a young woman pouring water into a wide clay amphora. Her dark curls tumble from beneath a loosely tied headscarf, and her dusty chiton clings damp against her knees. She sighs as she splashes her face with cool water, the droplets shining like tiny diamonds against her sun-browned skin. This is Antiope, princess of Boeotia, her life weighed with the burdens of duty and marriage alliances too distant to feel real. Zeus stops for a moment, watching her quietly. A smile plays across his lips, half amusement, half longing. Perhaps something simpler today, he muses under his breath, his voice low and calm like distant thunder murmuring beyond mountains. And then his shape ripples once more, chest narrowing, limbs growing agile and light. His hair tightens into sleek, ash-brown curls, his face sharpening into delicate lines crowned with a pair of flickering ivory horns. Before you now stands a young satyr, his chest bare, goat legs flexing against the rocky path. He flicks his tiny tail playfully, rolling his shoulders with a sigh of satisfaction. Better, he hums, his voice now lilting with youthful mischief. Historians still debate whether Zeus ever truly transformed into satyrs or simply disguised himself in illusions, but in this moment, the satyr's lean muscles ripple with real life and his golden eyes gleam with goatish cunning. He trots toward Antiope with sprightly steps, hooves tapping lightly against the stones. She looks up, startled, the amphora tilting dangerously before she steadies it. The satyr bows low, his horns dipping nearly to the ground in exaggerated greeting. "Beautiful princess," he says, voice soft and teasing, "surely you would grant a weary woodland wanderer a sip from your vessel." Antiope laughs lightly, brushing a stray curl behind her ear as she straightens her shoulders. "And what would a satyr do for me in return?" she teases, her eyes twinkling with a daring that belies her royal upbringing. The satyr, Zeus, places a delicate hoof against his chest, feigning scandalized offense. "Why, I would sing you the song of the river reeds, or dance until the sunset fades," he proclaims, his tail flicking in emphasis. She chuckles again, lifting the amphora to his lips. The cool water flows smoothly down his throat, dribbling slightly into his short chest hair. He drinks deeply, sighing in contentment before licking a stray droplet from his bottom lip with a quick flick of his tongue. Antiope watches him with open curiosity, unafraid. "Do satyrs thank their benefactors with kisses or riddles?" she asks softly. He tilts his head, golden eyes gleaming. "Both, if the benefactor wishes," he whispers. And leaning forward, he presses his lips against hers, warm, firm, tasting faintly of spring water and wild mint. Her hand lifts to cup his cheek as she kisses him back with a fervor born of quiet loneliness and hidden desire. Historians still argue whether Antiope was tricked, willingly seduced, or whether her tale was reshaped by fearful men who could not bear a woman choosing love beyond their control. Some versions claim she bore twin sons, Amphion, whose music could move stones to build Thebes' walls, and Zethus, the rugged herdsman warrior. Others say Zeus carried her away to Olympus, leaving her kingdom to crumble without her quiet wisdom. But here, in this golden-lit roadside moment, she knows only the soft brush of lips, the rasp of a small goat beard against her chin, the sense of being truly seen by eyes that flicker with something more than mortal hunger. As their kiss ends, the satyr bows low once more, his horns brushing her knees. "Thank you, lady," he murmurs, and with a swift flick of his tail, he springs away into the olive groves, leaving her lips tingling with memory. He emerges on the other side of the grove, golden eyes shifting back to deep storm gray as his horns vanish into thick curls. Zeus stretches his arms high, his spine cracking with sleepy relief. "Not bad," he says lightly, turning his gaze to you with a faint smirk. A simple disguise, but effective. Far overhead, a hawk drifts on the rising thermals, silent witness to God's hidden games. You follow Zeus as he strides down the rocky slope, shadows of olive branches dappling his shoulders, wondering which form he will choose tomorrow, and whether any mortal heart truly remains untouched by his wandering desire. The afternoon sun dips toward the western hills, sending long golden shafts of light across the dry plains of Boeotia. You walk alongside Zeus, his sandals crunching against pale gravel, as he moves with a restless energy born of immortal boredom. His thoughts seem to flicker faster than the cicadas buzz in the olive branches overhead. "Too many days as birds and beasts," he mutters under his breath, his eyes narrowing at the distant horizon where vineyards spill down low hillsides in green and dusty purple rows. Perhaps something divine, this time. He rolls his shoulders, muscles rippling beneath his linen chiton as he slows his pace, watching a young shepherdess tending her goats in the orchard ahead. This is Semele, daughter of Cadmus, princess of Thebes, and future mother of a god. She stands beneath a fig tree, shaking the branches to loosen its plump fruits, her thick braids swinging against her back. Her goats bleat hungrily around her feet, munching on fallen leaves as she hums a quiet tune, a lullaby her mother taught her, now sung to restless livestock. Historians still argue whether Semele truly desired Zeus or was simply caught in his tempestuous path. Some texts call her a willing lover, others a victim of Olympian arrogance. What remains certain is that her name lives forever alongside her son, Dionysus, whose wine-drenched worship would one day shatter and remake Greek festival life. Zeus watches her with a soft smile, his storm-gray eyes glowing faintly. "No creature guise today," he whispers. "She deserves to see a god." You sense a slight tremor in the air as his mortal form ripples and fades. Slowly, his skin brightens to molten gold, hair blazing like polished amber. His simple linen robe transforms into sweeping white and deep azure cloth edged in thin threads of lightning. Around his temples appears a faint circlet of flickering blue sparks. His aura expands outward, the air now crackling faintly with divine energy. Semele looks up from gathering figs, startled by the sudden flash of radiance among the olive trunks. The goats bleat in confusion, stamping their hooves nervously. She shields her eyes with a sun-browned hand, blinking into the shimmering brilliance before her. Zeus stands revealed in full glory, king of Olympus, bearer of thunder, his presence vibrating in the ground itself. He lowers his glow slightly so her vision clears, and when she sees his face, her breath catches in her throat. "Lord Zeus," she whispers, her voice trembling like a harp string plucked too hard. She falls to her knees in the dry grass, figs spilling from her basket and rolling across the orchard floor. "Rise, Semele," he says softly, his voice deep and resonant like distant thunder on a summer evening. "You honor me enough simply by looking upon me with unclouded eyes." She lifts her gaze slowly, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. He extends a golden hand, and she clasps it with shaking fingers. The warmth of his touch seeps into her bones, a heat both comforting and fearsome. Historians still debate whether Semele's tale is one of divine love or an early cautionary myth against hubris and longing for gods. Did her people shape her story to warn maidens against attracting Zeus's eye, or to immortalize her as the womb from which ecstatic liberation, Dionysus, would one day be born. Zeus kneels before her now, lowering himself until their eyes are level. "Do not fear me," he whispers, brushing a thumb across her cheek, leaving a faint static crackle on her skin. "I come to offer you a gift that will outlive your mortal days. A son who will bring joy and madness, song and sorrow, wine and truth." She closes her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks into the dry orchard earth below. "I am afraid," she whispers. He presses his brow lightly against hers, his golden hair mingling with her dark braids. "You probably won't survive this," he murmurs, voice tinged with reluctant honesty. "But neither would the world survive without the God you will bear." For a moment, silence falls between you all. The cicadas cease their singing. The orchard wind dies. Only the faint crackle of his lightning circlet remains, humming gently against the stillness. Then, with a sigh heavy as thunderheads, he pulls back, his radiance dimming just enough to let her breathe again. Historians still argue whether Semele's demise, consumed by Zeus's full divine form, was an accident of mortal fragility or the hidden consequence of Hera's jealous whisperings. Some say Hera, hateful of her husband's endless affairs, planted suspicion in Semele's heart until she demanded to see Zeus unveiled. Others argue Semele's own curiosity sealed her fate. But for now, beneath the fig tree's spreading branches, no wrathful queen intrudes upon this moment of trembling tenderness. Zeus leans forward, pressing a kiss to her forehead that sends a faint glow rippling through her entire body. You watch as her shoulders relax and her lips part in a small, dazed smile. She will carry this spark within her, and it will grow into Dionysus, god of wine, madness, and the joyous ecstasy that dissolves boundaries between life and death. He rises slowly, turning away from her with a shadow flickering across his radiant face. The goats begin to bleat again, uncertain whether to trust this fading godlight. Semele clutches her figs to her chest, her eyes following Zeus's retreating figure until he melts back into the dusty olive groves. As he steps out of sight, his glow dims entirely, leaving behind only a faint ozone scent clinging to the dry orchard breeze. You walk beside him once more, silent under the broadening evening sky, as his gaze turns northward toward Mount Olympus's snowy crown. "Tomorrow," he whispers under his breath, "I think, an eagle." Dawn breaks crisp and bright over the Thessalian plains, the sun igniting every dewdrop in the grass until the world shimmers with pale gold. You trudge beside Zeus as he moves with renewed focus this morning, sandals snapping against damp ground, eyes locked on the horizon where Mount Olympus rises stark and silver-edged above the mist. His mind flickers like lightning as he plans his next approach to win another mortal heart. "Eagles today," he mutters, brushing a long blade of wet grass from his robe's hem. "Majestic. Powerful. Intimidating. Exactly what I need for Ganymede." Ahead, tending a small herd of sleek white sheep, stands a young Trojan prince. Ganymede's hair curls in dark bronze waves around his temples, catching the morning light. His cloak is pinned neatly at one shoulder with a hammered copper brooch, and his movements are quiet, graceful, almost regal even in these simple morning tasks. Historians still argue whether Ganymede was truly a shepherd prince or a symbolic myth crafted to justify Zeus's fondness for beautiful youths. Some record him as the son of Tros, king of Troy, whose grief at his abduction was soothed only when Zeus gifted him immortal horses in exchange. Others claim Ganymede represents the cultural practice of noble boy companionship in Greek aristocratic society, woven retroactively into divine narrative. Zeus watches him now with a keen and tender gaze. "He will pour nectar in Olympus one day," he murmurs, "but first, he must feel the sky." You feel the air pressure shift as Zeus's form ripples and condenses inward. His arms fold into feathered pinions, his feet curl back into fierce talons. Feathers sprout along his spine in a rippling cascade of brown, gold, and dark umber. Within moments, a giant eagle stands beside you, eyes burning bright and cold as sunlit amber, hooked beak glinting sharp enough to shear bone. He spreads his wings wide, the tips brushing wet grass with a soft hiss before snapping down in one powerful stroke. The ground vibrates beneath the sudden downdraft, and with a rush of wind and a burst of startled birds from nearby reeds, he rises into the dawn. Below, Ganymede shields his eyes, peering up into the brilliance as the eagle circles lower. His sheep bleat in confusion, pressing together in a shifting white mass around his knees. He stands still as stone, a small smile flickering across his lips despite the fear widening his eyes. You watch from above as the eagle dips once, twice, then swoops down in a final silent strike. Talons wrap around Ganymede's slim waist, careful but unyielding. A cry bursts from his lips, more shock than pain, as his feet leave the grass, his cloak whipping against his ankles in the rising wind. The eagle beats its massive wings, ascending steadily, and the sheep recede below into a trembling patchwork of white and green. Historians still debate whether Ganymede's abduction was painted in tragic hues of loss or celebratory tones of divine honor. Some vase paintings depict him gazing upward in calm acceptance, while others show him twisting away in panic, one sandal falling free to tumble back to earth. But the myth remains constant in one truth: he never touched mortal soil again. The wind roars around you as you soar higher, the plain spreading out in all directions, dotted with olive groves and distant marble temples glowing faintly in morning light. Ganymede's dark curls whip against his forehead as he clings to the eagle's leg, eyes streaming tears that vanish into the rushing air behind him. Yet his expression slowly shifts from terror to wonder as the earth drops away and the sky opens itself in endless blue above. The eagle rises in slow spirals toward the jagged white crown of Olympus. Cold air bites your cheeks, and thin wisps of cloud brush past like damp silk. Ganymede's trembling eases as he lifts his head, eyes wide with disbelief as he sees the golden gates of Olympus glittering far above, guarded by their silent white marble lions. Zeus's voice echoes faintly within the eagle's chest. "You probably won't survive this," he murmurs with a touch of wry regret, "but fortunately, you won't need to remain mortal." Historians still argue whether Zeus truly loved Ganymede or simply desired him as an eternal servant to pour his nectar and sweet ambrosia at Olympian feasts. Some hymns praise Ganymede as the most beautiful youth ever born of mortal womb. Others lament him as a stolen prince, forever exiled from Troy to live in cold immortal service. Now the eagle beats its wings in a final powerful thrust upward, clearing the last mist-wreathed ridge before descending slowly into the golden courtyard of Olympus. Gods and goddesses turn their heads in mild curiosity as the giant eagle lands upon the marble tiles with a metallic scrape of talons. Ganymede trembles as he is set gently upon the stone floor, his sandals clicking faintly as he straightens his cloak with shaking fingers. Athena tilts her bronze-helmed head, appraising the youth with cool detachment. Hera's lips press into a thin line, eyes glittering with silent fury at yet another of her husband's mortal prizes. Apollo leans back against a golden column, strumming a gentle chord on his lyre as he studies the trembling prince with mild admiration. Zeus's eagle form ripples and collapses inward, feathers folding back into flesh, talons shifting into sandal-clad feet, beak softening into his familiar strong-jawed face. He stands now in his full kingly splendor, his hand resting lightly on Ganymede's slender shoulder. "Welcome, my cupbearer," he says softly. "Pour well, and you shall never age nor die." Ganymede bows his head in silent acceptance, tears still clinging to his lashes but his lips curving into a faint, stunned smile. For a moment, the courtyard falls silent except for the distant ripple of Apollo's lyre and the faint coo of doves roosting atop marble arches. And you, standing in the shadows of godhood, watch as yet another mortal life is lifted from the dust into timeless eternity, neither entirely blessed nor wholly cursed, but woven forever into the glowing threads of Olympian myth. The late afternoon sun slants across the rocky hillsides of Crete, gilding scrubby thyme bushes and jagged limestone outcrops in warm gold. You walk beside Zeus along a narrow goat track, the cicadas droning with relentless insistence all around. His robes brush against dusty wildflowers as he strides silently, brow furrowed with a contemplative tension. Today, he has come not for beauty or devotion, but revenge. His eyes flicker with flickering shadows as he scans the landscape ahead. King Minos thinks he can defy the gods, he murmurs softly, his voice low and dark like distant thunder rumbling beyond the horizon. But his wife, she will remind him that Olympus watches all. You follow his gaze to the great stone palace sprawling along the hilltop. Beyond its high terraces grazes a massive white bull, its flanks gleaming like polished ivory under the setting sun. Its horns curve broad and perfect, its deep brown eyes calm as it rips mouthfuls of clover and chews slowly with an indifferent majesty. Historians still argue whether this bull was a divine gift from Poseidon or bred by Minos's herdsmen to impress tribute collectors. The myth, however, remains unwavering. Poseidon sent Minos this flawless bull with the expectation it would be sacrificed to him. But Minos, overcome by greed and pride, kept it for his own herds, sacrificing an inferior animal instead. Zeus inhales deeply, the hot thyme-scented air rattling quietly in his chest. Poseidon sent the bull, he whispers, but I will finish the lesson. His form ripples again, shimmering with molten gold light before shrinking inward. Muscles shift, bones creak softly, skin thickens to hide and sinew. Before you now stands a magnificent white bull, indistinguishable from Poseidon's creature grazing the palace grounds. His eyes glow faintly silver in the dimming light, and when he exhales, the warm air shivers with an undercurrent of storm. You watch as he tosses his heavy horned head once before lowering it to graze, his broad cloven hooves sinking into the dry earth. Slowly, he begins moving downhill toward the palace, each step heavy and deliberate, his massive shoulders rippling with the quiet force of an ocean tide rolling against stone. At the edge of the garden stands Pasiphae, queen of Crete, draped in a thin gauze veil that floats in the evening breeze like pale sea foam. Her hair gleams obsidian black under her gold diadem, and her kohl-lined eyes follow the bull's approach with wide, frantic hunger. Historians still debate whether Pasiphae's desire was cursed upon her by Poseidon as punishment for Minos's arrogance or inspired by Aphrodite's whimsical cruelty. Some texts claim she pursued the bull with willing madness, others that she wept as uncontrollable desire consumed her dignity. Either way, you watch now as she steps forward, barefoot upon warm marble tiles, her breath coming shallow and ragged. Her attendants watch in silent horror, mouths hidden behind trembling fingers as their queen kneels in the dirt, reaching out a delicate jeweled hand to touch the bull's massive flank. His hide twitches slightly under her touch, but he does not move away. Instead, he lowers his heavy head, breathing in her scent with a deep, rattling exhale that stirs her veil against her chest. You probably won't survive this, you whisper under your breath, though she cannot hear you. Her fingers slide along the bull's muscular neck, and her lips part with a trembling sigh that catches in her throat like a sob. The sky overhead dims to purple as the last edge of sun slips behind the western ridges. Historians still argue about Daedalus' role in this tale. Did the cunning inventor craft her wooden bull purely out of fear of Minos's wrath, or was he driven by a darker curiosity to see if human desire could breach species boundaries? The myth records only that he built it hollow, on wheels, lined with softest calfskin, so that Pasiphae could climb inside and deceive the divine beast into coupling with her. You watch as Zeus in bull form turns his massive head, regarding her with pale glowing eyes that flicker with hidden knowledge. Perhaps it is true, as some scholars suggest, that Pasiphae's union with the bull created not only the monstrous Minotaur but also sealed Minos's doom by humiliating his throne and bloodline forever. The queen weeps silently as she presses her brow to the bull's broad chest, her veil brushing against his musky hide. The scent of thyme, goat droppings, and hot animal skin mingles in the cooling evening breeze. You see her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, though whether from shame, ecstasy, or grief, no myth preserves with certainty. Zeus watches her with unreadable eyes before stepping back, his hooves sinking heavily into the churned-up earth. Slowly, his form ripples again, shrinking inward, muscles reknitting into his divine frame. Within moments, the bull has vanished, leaving only Zeus standing in silent moonlight, his white robes glowing pale against the darkening palace walls. He turns away without a word, leaving Pasiphae kneeling in the dirt, her attendants rushing forward to pull her away, their hushed cries echoing faintly into the descending night. The olive branches whisper overhead as you follow Zeus down the path away from Knossos, your sandals brushing against dry wild sage underfoot. Historians still argue whether Zeus's participation here was later woven into an originally Poseidon-focused myth, or if it reveals the king of gods' ultimate orchestration of mortal humiliation to remind them that no offering, no matter how glittering, could ever outweigh obedience to divine will. Ahead, Zeus lifts his gaze to the silver-pale crescent moon rising above the dark cypress groves, his face unreadable in the dim starlight. Tomorrow, he whispers softly, a serpent's cunning, and a maiden's doom. Morning arrives pale and brittle as you walk alongside Zeus through dense river reeds, the thin green blades dripping with dew that soaks your sandals instantly. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of silt and wet rushes. Overhead, herons will lazily against the soft lavender sky. Zeus moves silently, his robes brushing against the reeds with a soft whisper. Today, he seems almost content, his mood lighter than yesterday's grim revenge. He pauses beside a wide slow-moving stream, its surface speckled with drifting pollen and the reflection of pale dawn clouds. This river, he murmurs, is where she bathes each morning, far from her father's palace. You peer through the reeds and spot a young woman kneeling at the water's edge. Her white linen robe is pulled low off her shoulders, dark hair cascading down her back like a wet veil. She dips a bronze ewer into the stream, pouring cool water over her arms in a graceful arc. This is Callisto, daughter of Lycaon, priestess of Artemis. Historians still argue whether she was an Arcadian mountain nymph or a mortal huntress sworn to virgin service in Artemis's retinue. Either way, you watch now as she scrubs her arms clean of sleep, her face composed with focused serenity. Zeus watches her intently, his eyes flickering with desire and mischief. Artemis guards her maidens well, he says softly, but even the goddess of the hunt cannot shoot what she does not see. His form ripples again, shimmering silver gold before hardening into new flesh, new lines, new grace. When the light clears, standing where Zeus once stood is now Artemis herself, tall, pale-skinned, clad in a short gray hunting tunic, her dark hair pulled back in an intricate braid, a carved bow slung across her back. You blink at the transformation. His borrowed face carries Artemis's fierce yet gentle gaze perfectly. Even the slim muscles of her arms look natural on his god-shaped frame. Zeus steps forward through the reeds, sandals silent on damp soil. Callisto looks up in surprise, eyes widening with delight. Lady Artemis, she gasps, kneeling quickly, head bowed. Forgive me, I did not see you arrive. Zeus Artemis smiles faintly, her lips curling in a calm, cool amusement. Rise, Callisto, she says, her voice a perfect echo of the huntress goddess. I have watched you these many dawns, faithful and strong. Callisto stands, shoulders pulled back proudly despite her startled blush. Historians still argue whether Callisto truly mistook Zeus's disguise or suspected something was amiss. Some poets claim she felt a flicker of dread in Artemis's gaze that morning, others insist her devotion blinded her completely. Regardless, you see her smile now as Zeus Artemis steps closer, brushing damp hair from her forehead in a gesture half maternal, half possessive. For a moment, the river murmurs quietly between them, reeds whispering like restless spectators in the dawn breeze. Then Zeus leans in, pressing his lips to Callisto's in a slow, deliberate kiss. Her body goes rigid with shock, hands clutching her robe as she gasps faintly against his mouth. When he pulls back, his eyes gleam with triumph beneath Artemis's borrowed brow. You probably won't survive this, you think wryly as Callisto trembles, confusion and horror flickering across her face. Before she can cry out, Zeus's form ripples again, returning in a rush of golden light to his own tall, broad-shouldered frame. She stumbles backward into the reeds, her eyes wide with silent terror as she realizes what has occurred. Zeus sighs, adjusting his robes casually as though nothing of consequence has happened. Overhead, a heron croaks harshly, lifting its wings and flapping away upriver. You watch Callisto sink to her knees in the shallows, staring down at her trembling hands, water rippling away in soft silver circles. Historians still debate whether Artemis banished Callisto purely for breaking her vow of chastity or for the deception of allowing herself to be touched by a god in Artemis's own form. Some texts claim Artemis turned her into a bear out of jealous rage, others insist Hera cursed her as punishment for bearing Zeus's child. Either way, you see Callisto now months later, her swollen belly hidden beneath a rough woven cloak as she trudges alone through an oak forest. Her eyes are sunken with grief and exhaustion. Birds flit between the bare branches above, their thin winter songs echoing through the frosty air. Her feet crunch dead leaves with each unsteady step. When she pauses to rest against a thick mossy trunk, her breath emerges in shaky white puffs. Suddenly, the undergrowth ahead rustles, and Artemis herself emerges, bow in hand, her face frozen in cold fury. Callisto falls to her knees instantly, head bowed in shame. The goddess circles her slowly, booted steps silent on the cold forest floor. You feel the air tighten with quiet, expectant dread. Historians still argue whether Callisto's transformation into a bear was instantaneous or drawn out in excruciating stages. Some myths describe her skin rippling into coarse brown fur as her bones shorten painfully. Others simply say that in the blink of an eye, the beautiful priestess vanished, replaced by a massive trembling she-bear. Before you now stands that bear, black-eyed, panting heavily, her thick flanks heaving with panicked breaths. Her clawed paws sink into the damp moss as she looks up at Artemis with silent despair. For a moment, the goddess's face softens with something like pity, but it passes quickly as she raises her hand in dismissal. "You probably won't survive this either," you whisper to yourself as the bear turns and lumbers away into the dark forest, her shadow long and lonely under the pale midwinter sun. Zeus, watching unseen from high above in the shifting clouds, merely smiles faintly, his eyes flickering with a satisfaction that chills you despite the morning breeze. The days pass in a blur of silent forest paths and lonely bear trails. You follow Callisto's shaggy form as she trudges through frost-hardened grass and dense thickets of bare winter hazel. Her heavy paws crush fallen leaves into pulp, and her broad snout drips with dew as she pushes through bramble tunnels that once brushed only her slender priestess shoulders. One dawn, while she digs for bitter roots beneath an old fallen oak, her ears flick forward at a familiar rustle. You turn to see a young hunter creeping between the trees, his bow strung taut and an arrow knocked loosely between his fingers. His hair is black as crow feathers, his cloak worn thin and patched with squirrel pelts. This is Arcas, her son, grown now into a strong Arcadian hunter. Historians still argue whether Arcas knew his true parentage. Some say his mother's identity was hidden from him by elders who feared Zeus's wrath, others believe he was told she had died long ago, leaving him to grow up among shepherds at the forest's edge. Either way, his eyes now scan the undergrowth with wary focus, unaware that the great she-bear staring back at him is his own mother. Callisto freezes, her broad chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. The winter dawn glows pale pink through the trees, illuminating his boyish cheekbones and a tiny silver hoop glinting in his left ear, a gift from an older hunting brother, you remember, given in silent blessing before his first boar kill. He raises his bow slowly, eyes narrowing as he sights along the shaft, aiming straight at the bear's heart. You probably won't survive this, you think, holding your own breath as Callisto lets out a faint choking whimper, her black eyes glistening with grief. She rises on her hind legs, towering tall above him, front claws curled against her chest in a silent pleading gesture. For a moment, Arcas falters, lips parting in confusion at the bear's strangely human posture. And then, with a rush of warm gold light that ripples through the frozen glade, Zeus intervenes. His form materializes between them, robes billowing outwards as though caught in a wind only he can feel. Arcas stumbles backwards with a strangled cry, arrow clattering to the frozen ground. Callisto drops to all fours, her heavy head lowered in shame and relief. Zeus raises his hands calmly, and in an instant, both bear and boy are lifted from the forest floor in a swirl of glowing brilliance. The trees vanish beneath them, replaced by thin, cold air and a darkening sky strewn with early evening stars. Up they rise together, higher and higher, the ground spinning away in a distant blur until it disappears entirely. Historians still debate whether Zeus's choice to place Callisto and Arcas among the constellations was mercy or arrogance. Some myths suggest Hera forced his hand, demanding the pair be exiled forever from Earth. Others argue Zeus did it to protect them from Artemis's wrath, immortalizing their bond beyond mortal retribution. You watch now as Callisto's bare form elongates and freezes, her thick fur solidifying into tiny glinting pinpricks of white gold light. Beside her, Arcas' limbs stiffen into starry outlines, his bow forever drawn and aimed at the endless cosmic horizon. Together, they become Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the Great Bear and the Little Bear, fixed high above the world in silent unblinking vigil. A cold breeze sighs past your cheek, and you realize you're standing once again beside Zeus atop his invisible throne of cloud. He gazes up at the new constellations with satisfied pride, the stars reflecting cold brilliance in his hooded eyes. Now they will never be apart, he murmurs, though his voice carries no warmth of mercy, only the smooth finality of a king securing his domain. Historians still argue whether the Greeks believed these constellations brought blessings to hunters and farmers below, or whether they saw them as tragic reminders of divine cruelty disguised as cosmic generosity. Sailors navigating by Ursa Minor's faint flickering tail called it Cynosura, the dog's tail, and prayed to it for safe northern passage, unaware their guiding light was a silent frozen boy destined never to return to Earth. Zeus turns to you with a faint smile, sensing your restless unease. You think me cruel, he says softly, brushing a strand of sky breeze from your cheek. But tell me, would you rather she live out her days gnawing roots in the frozen forest, hunted by her own child, or shine eternal above the world in beauty beyond decay? You have no answer. Only the quiet flicker of stars overhead, each one a burning secret in the silent vault of night. Below, the forest lies hushed in evening dark. The brambles whisper as an owl swoops low between the oaks, searching for mice scuttling beneath fallen leaves. Somewhere, deep in a hollow tree, a fox curls tighter against the creeping frost, dreaming of spring rabbits fat with milk. And overhead, Callisto and Arcas glow with cold immortal brilliance, their story carved forever into the dark heavens by a god whose love is more terrible than his rage. You probably won't survive this, you whisper once more, though the words vanish in the chill dusk air before they reach your own ears. Morning drifts across Olympus in a haze of rose-gold light, brushing the marble columns with sleepy brilliance. You find yourself walking beside Zeus again, his sandaled feet silent on the cloudstone floor as he leads you towards a shaded courtyard. The sky arches pale and cloudless overhead, a thin falcon circling far above. Today, he says, he will show you a lighter tale, though light is relative when it comes to Zeus. This one involves Europa, the Phoenician princess whose name would echo down through centuries to define an entire continent. You follow him through ivy-draped arches into the courtyard's wide sunlit space, where you see her, Europa, hair dark as river mud, standing on a pebble beach beside her maidens, weaving garlands of white narcissus and laughing softly as waves lap at her sand-dusted toes. Historians still argue whether Europa's kingdom was centered at Tyre or Sidon. Some place her royal home near modern-day Lebanon's bustling coastlines, while others claim her story drifted westward only when Greek colonists carried her name to new lands. Either way, here she is now, humming under her breath, unaware that the king of gods watches from a distance. Zeus tilts his head, dark curls rippling faintly in the sea breeze. Then, with a sly smile, he vanishes from your side. Where he once stood, a great white bull now grazes among the narcissus blooms. Its hide gleams silver-white under the sun, horns curling wide and polished like carved ivory. Europa's maidens gasp in delight, dropping their flower chains to stroke its broad shoulders, their laughter echoing against the limestone cliffs beyond. You probably won't survive this, you think as Europa steps forward, eyes wide with wonder. She places a trembling hand against the bull's massive cheek, her fingers disappearing into his short velvet fur. The bull huffs softly, warm grassy breath washing over her bare arms, and she giggles, pressing closer. Within moments, she swings one leg over his wide back, settling astride him with childlike ease. The bull paws the sand, muscles bunching beneath its moon-pale hide. Then, with a single lurching bound, it plunges forward into the shallow surf. Europa shrieks in startled laughter as the bull surges through breaking waves, each step spraying diamond droplets into the blinding noon light. Her maidens scream her name from the shore, skirts whipping around their legs in panic as the bull swims swiftly away from land. You see her clutching his broad neck as the shoreline recedes, her dark hair streaming behind her in damp tangles. The bull's powerful limbs churn through sapphire waves until the mainland fades into a pale smear against the horizon. Dolphins leap beside them, silver bellies flashing in brief arcs before disappearing beneath the rolling blue. Overhead, gulls wheel and cry, their calls fading into silence as the bull swims deeper into the open sea. Historians still debate whether Europa knew this was a god from the moment he first nuzzled her palm. Some myths claim Aphrodite sent arrows to pierce her with desire, ensuring she would climb willingly onto Zeus's bull form. Others say Europa's prayers to the Earth Mother blinded her to divine tricks. Either way, you watch her now, shivering atop the bull's slick back as the island of Crete emerges from ocean haze ahead. The bull lands gently on a rocky Cretan beach, its white hide steaming faintly under the midday sun. Europa slips from his back, trembling with cold, fear, and a thrill she doesn't quite understand. As her bare feet touch the warm pebbles, Zeus sheds his disguise in a swirl of golden mist, rising tall and brilliant before her. His hair drips with seawater and starlight. His smile glows wide with victory. He promises her royal marriage, though of course Hera remains forever his official queen. He promises her 3 mighty sons, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Sarpedon, who will rule kingdoms and judge the dead. He promises her a place among the stars, birthing myths that will carry her name beyond any mortal lifespan. And then he folds her into his arms as the sea breeze whispers through sun-bleached rushes along the shore. You probably won't survive this, you murmur under your breath as you watch him lean close to Europa's ear, murmuring words you cannot hear. She gazes up at him with wide, unblinking eyes, the foam-flecked curls of the Mediterranean lapping at their feet. Historians still argue whether Europa's abduction was celebrated or mourned by her people. Some suggest it formed the origin story of powerful Cretan thalassocracies, others claim it was a cautionary tale about the untrustworthiness of gods and the fragility of mortal sovereignty. Later poets would romanticize her ride as an erotic adventure, while older hymns lamented her stolen freedom. You stand silent on the quiet beach as Europa bows her head, accepting her fate in silence. Overhead, clouds drift westward in slow ghostly herds. Far beyond the horizon, the kingdoms she left behind continue their trade and worship, unaware their princess now walks a stranger's palace floor, her name destined to become shorthand for foreign conquest and sea-crossing longing. Zeus turns towards you with a faint smile of triumph. She will birth kings, he says simply, as if that alone justifies everything. His words ripple with finality, blending with the rhythmic hush of waves against rock. You watch as Europa's shadow lengthens across the pale sand, stretching eastward towards a homeland she will never see again. The golden haze of Crete's dawn melts into deep Mediterranean blues as you follow Zeus inland, leaving Europa behind in her new palace of sun-baked limestone and dark cedar beams. You tread quietly beside him through olive groves heavy with silver-green fruit, cicadas buzzing their steady summer chant in the branches above. Today, he tells you, you will witness another of his transformations, this time, into golden rain itself. You glance sideways at him, unsure whether to laugh or simply accept that in Greek myth, no boundary remains unbroken, no disguise too ridiculous for the king of gods. Historians still argue whether this myth emerged in Argos or Mycenae, 2 rival kingdoms whose Bronze Age ruins still rise like jagged teeth against cloudless skies. Either way, the story centers on Danae, a princess locked away by fear and prophecy. You see her now, Danae, daughter of King Acrisius, pacing slowly within a small bronze tower. Sunlight filters through latticework windows, casting shifting nets of light across her pale linen dress. Her hair gleams like fresh-spun honey, coiled in thick braids around her crown. She moves with restless grace between loom and low stool, the clang of distant palace workmen echoing faintly up the tower walls. King Acrisius had heard from Delphi that his grandson would one day kill him. Panicked, he imprisoned Danae in this windowless bronze chamber, thinking no man would ever reach her. But prophecy, like gravity, bends all human resistance. And gods rarely care for mortal fears. You probably won't survive this, you think as Zeus raises his palm toward the barred skylight far above. At first, nothing happens. Then golden motes flicker in the dusty air. Slowly, they gather into glowing streams, cascading downwards in shimmering rivulets that pass straight through iron bars and bronze plates as if they were mist. The air fills with a faint hum, like distant lyres plucked beneath temple porticos at dusk. Danae looks up, eyes widening in silent wonder. The golden rain falls upon her hair, her shoulders, her upturned palms. It flows like liquid sun down her bare arms, pooling softly in the hollow of her collarbone before soaking into the thin linen stretched across her chest. She gasps, clutching her dress as rivulets flow into the shadows between her thighs, the golden droplets absorbing into her skin with a tingling warmth that makes her knees buckle to the cold stone floor. Historians still argue whether ancient listeners took this literally, imagining gold as fertile life, or whether it was understood as a poetic euphemism for divine intimacy. In any case, here you stand, watching Danae cradle her belly months later as the bronze chamber grows humid with her sighs and prayers. A child now stirs within her, Perseus, slayer of Medusa, rescuer of Andromeda, future founder of Mycenae's mighty line. You probably won't survive this, you murmur under your breath, as King Acrisius unlocks the bronze door at last and sees his daughter glowing with the quiet certainty of a woman who carries a secret too powerful for human chains. His terror fills the tiny chamber like sour incense. He orders a wooden chest built at once, large enough to hold Danae and her infant son, it seems sealed with pitch against the tides. Before dawn, palace guards carry the box down to the shingle beach, cold salt wind flapping their cloaks. They push it into grey foaming surf. Danae wraps Perseus tightly against her breast, her tears dampening his dark newborn hair as the chest tips and rocks through dawnlit waves. Overhead, gulls cry their high dissonant prayers to the rising sun. The tide carries them westward into myth. Historians still debate how Greek sailors interpreted Danae's sea-bound exile. Some saw it as punishment from jealous Hera, others as proof of Zeus's failure to protect his mortal loves from the vengeance of human kings. Modern scholars point to the story's maritime imagery, reflecting the sea-based trading routes that spread Mycenaean power beyond Peloponnese shores. The chest drifts for days, battered by winter winds and slow swells, until it washes ashore on the island of Seriphos. Fishermen in reed hats and salt-crusted tunics pry the lid open with bronze chisels, revealing the trembling woman and her silent child. They lift them gently to sunlit sand, calling for warm blankets and sweet goat milk, unaware that the gods' long game has only begun. You stand behind Danae as she clutches Perseus tighter, tears and sea spray crusting her lashes. Overhead, dark clouds gather slowly over distant mountains. Zeus stands far above them in the vault of Olympus, his expression unreadable as the fates begin weaving Perseus's destiny among their endless threads. He turns to you with a faint, sardonic smile. Even gold falls, he murmurs softly. You glance back at Danae, the golden rain's memory fading into the ache of her limbs and the saltburn on her raw knees. Another mortal girl touched by divinity, another prophecy born through fear, desire, and unstoppable fate. You close your eyes, listening to the gulls scream overhead, the wind combing through drifting seaweed on the pebbled shore, and the infant Perseus sighing softly against his mother's chest. The tide pulls out with a quiet hiss, revealing damp rippled sand strewn with broken shells and tiny stranded fish gasping at the dawn. You follow Zeus inland from Seriphos, the dawn wind tangling your hair with sea salt as you climb rocky slopes towards a grove of stunted oaks. He walks beside you silently, his face thoughtful under thick dark curls that ripple like storm clouds across Olympus's heights. Today, he tells you, is the story of Callisto, a tale tangled with longing and jealousy, ending not with birth or triumph but cold cosmic exile. You step quietly between low gray boulders crusted with moss, oak leaves crackling under your sandals. A stag darts through the grove, startled by your passing. The air smells of damp earth, rotting acorns, and bitter laurel sap. Ahead, you see her, Callisto, maiden huntress of Arcadia, fierce companion to Artemis herself. Her hair is dark and loose, falling over strong bare shoulders as she crouches beside a forest spring, cupping cool water in both hands to drink. Her quiver hangs across her back, tipped with fletched arrows bright as bird feathers. Historians still argue whether Callisto was a local forest nymph absorbed into Artemis's retinue or a mortal princess later mythologized by regional cults. Either way, her beauty and loyalty became famous across Greece, carried by hunters' songs to distant mountain shrines. Artemis forbade her companions all love and marriage, binding them to virginity like a warrior's oath. But Zeus's gaze fell upon Callisto as she stalked red deer through tangled oak thickets, her linen chiton hitched to her thighs, her skin gleaming with sweat under the hot Arcadian sun. You watch him approach now in silence, his footfalls rustling the fallen leaves like whispers. You probably won't survive this, you think, as his shape flickers and shifts. In one blink, Artemis herself stands where Zeus once walked, bearing a silver bow and a quiver slung over her shoulder, moonlight clinging to her skin despite the noonday sun. Callisto looks up, eyes brightening with innocent devotion. She reaches for her goddess's hand without hesitation, her own calloused fingers curling around what she believes is Artemis's pale wrist. Zeus bends down, brushing a kiss across her lips. She stiffens with confusion, her brows furrowing as realization dawns in her dark eyes. But the deception has already rooted itself within her flesh. When Callisto next bathes with Artemis's companions, her belly swells softly under her girdle. Murmurs ripple through the cold spring water like darting minnows. Artemis's fury is swift and wordless. She raises her hand, and Callisto's shape buckles under invisible pressure. Her arms twist forward, shrinking into bristled forelegs. Her feet crack and elongate into wide clawed paws. Her nose stretches painfully into a long, trembling snout. Within moments, where a woman once stood, there now hunches a trembling she-bear, her dark eyes glistening with human terror and silent pleading. Historians still debate whether Artemis herself transformed Callisto or whether Zeus, fearing Hera's wrath, changed her to hide his crime. Ancient poets shifted blame like flickering oil lamps in temple halls, each retelling shadowing the god's cruelty in different angles of faint compassion. You watch Callisto stagger away into the dark oak forest, her shaggy brown coat glistening with spring water, her paws sinking into soft moss. Months pass in silent exile until she gives birth among the ferns to a small cub, Arcas, child of Zeus, hidden from Hera's gaze but doomed by fate nonetheless. Years later, Arcas grows strong and lithe, learning to hunt with oak bows strung with twisted gut and arrows tipped in flint. One misty dawn, he tracks a she-bear through the forest, unaware that her heart beats with a mother's desperate recognition. As he raises his bow, eyes narrowing in focus, Zeus intervenes with a flick of his wrist. "You probably won't survive this," you whisper, as the world itself seems to shiver and tilt. In a rush of wind scented with ozone and rain, Callisto and Arcas are flung upwards into the cold black vault of night. Their bodies twist, stretching into endless dark until they burn as silver constellations against the void. Historians still argue whether these constellations, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, were originally separate sky-bear myths later unified by Greek astronomers, or whether Callisto's story was woven backwards from star patterns to moral cautionary tales. Either way, you stand now beneath their pinprick light, feeling the cold infinite reach of the heavens pour down across your scalp. Above you, Callisto arcs from horizon to zenith, her bare shape luminous against the fathomless night. Beside her, Arcas circles quietly, a child forever chasing his mother through silent black eternity. The Greeks called her Helike, she who turns, forever pivoting around Polaris at the world's hidden axle. Roman sailors learned her name as Ursa Major, guiding their triremes through storm-dark waters by her slow eternal spin. You close your eyes and listen to the wind combing the oak grove far below, rustling the fallen leaves with soft, dry fingers. Zeus stands beside you, silent for once, watching his lost lovers orbit the darkness in quiet penance. In the distance, wolves howl their thin autumn lament into moonlit valleys, and the constellations will overhead, untouchable and unchanging, until dawn bleeds pale gold along the eastern peaks. The oak grove fades behind you, replaced by low rolling hills cloaked in thyme and lavender. The morning breeze carries the sharp, dusty sweetness of crushed herbs as you walk beside Zeus towards his final transformation in tonight's winding journey. His steps are silent on the pale rocky path, his face unreadable under the rising gold of dawn. Ahead, nestled between olive groves and thin cypress stands, lies a small stone farmhouse surrounded by terraced vineyards. Vines sag heavy with pale green clusters glinting in the first light. A woman kneels among them, gathering fallen grapes into a wide wicker basket. Her skin glows golden brown from sun and wind. This is Antiope, daughter of King Nycteus of Thebes. Historians still argue whether Antiope was truly a Theban princess or a rustic mountain nymph woven into royal genealogies to sanctify their power. Either way, you see her now, a mortal woman bent to her morning labor, hair braided and tied with a strip of pale cloth, ankles dusted with dry vineyard soil. You probably won't survive this, you think, as Zeus halts beside you. His form blurs once more, his dark curls flickering into curling goat horns, his muscular torso shrinking into slender animal limbs. Within moments, a satyr stands in his place, half man, half goat, his shaggy hindquarters flecked with black and white, cloven hooves pawing the dust. He grins, his teeth sharp and small, his golden eyes filled with restless, feral joy. Antiope looks up at the rustle of grape leaves. Her gaze softens with gentle amusement as the satyr prances towards her, flicking his small tail. Satyrs, after all, are common sights in woodland myths, harmless tricksters who play reed pipes and chase dryads with clumsy lust. But this satyr carries divine power within his goat-blooded veins. He circles her lightly, hoofsteps crunching on fallen grapes, their skins bursting with sweet fragrant juice under his weight. Then, with a sudden bound, he catches her wrist and pulls her close, his breath smelling faintly of pine resin and distant Olympus storms. The vineyard rustles around them like hidden applause as Antiope gasps in shock. Historians still debate whether Antiope welcomed Zeus's approach or fled in terror. Ancient plays depict her as a weeping exile, while local myths claim she bore his twin sons with quiet pride. Either way, she becomes pregnant with Amphion and Zethus, future founders of Thebes' mighty walls. The scene flickers, and you see Antiope wandering the roads of Greece alone, cast out by her furious father. Her hair is tangled with dust and thistle fluff, her sandals worn thin against sharp gravel paths. She clutches her swelling belly, each step sending pain up her spine as she flees Thebes' guards sent to drag her back. At last, exhausted and shaking, she collapses beneath an ancient fig tree whose wide green leaves tremble in the hot noon breeze. 2 infants slip from her womb, their first cries mingling with cicada song. She gathers them in trembling arms, kissing their damp foreheads as fig wasps buzz lazily among fallen fruit. Historians still argue whether Amphion and Zethus represent 2 rival tribal dynasties merged under Thebes' later kings. But poets saw them as music and strength embodied, Amphion charming stone blocks into place with his lyre while Zethus wrestled each foundation rock with his bare hands, raising Thebes 7 gates higher than any mortal city before. You probably won't survive this, you think, as Zeus, still in his satyr form, fades back into immortal invisibility. Antiope rises slowly, cradling her twins. Her hair clings to her damp cheeks as she staggers down the winding hill path towards a distant village. There, kind shepherds take her in, feeding her warm barley cakes and sweet-watered wine under rough reed roofs. Years later, Amphion's lyre will pluck bright silver notes into dawn skies, coaxing stone after stone into perfect stacked harmony. Zethus's thick arms will heave iron-bound gates into place, forging the city's future with calloused fingers and silent, stubborn devotion. Thebes will rise under their toil, its walls a testament to both divine seduction and mortal endurance. Historians still debate whether these twin builders ever truly lived or if their story emerged to explain the Cyclopean walls whose origins predate known kings. Their names echo nonetheless in crumbling ruins, their legend carved into broken lintels and scattered temple friezes among grazing goats and nodding poppies. You stand quietly now beside Zeus, who has resumed his towering divine form. The dawn sun gilds his brow, casting his shadow across vineyards and fig groves below. He glances down at you with a faint, tired smile, as if the weight of these transformations, these games of lust, disguise, and cosmic consequence, has grown heavy even for him. The wind shifts, carrying the smell of warming earth, crushed thyme, and fresh-picked grapes. You close your eyes, letting the sun seep into your chilled bones, your mind drifting between goat-footed laughter, trembling mortal prayers, and the faint clatter of lyre strings summoning stone to dance. Slowly, the bright edges of this long journey soften. Zeus's shape blurs into the light, and the hills fade into a hazy golden quiet. Your breathing slows further now, soft and easy. Each breath carries you deeper into a quiet place where the echoes of ancient myths dissolve into dusk-hued dreams. Feel your shoulders drop just a little heavier against the bed or chair. Let your jaw unclench, your eyelids drift down, and the thoughts behind your brow soften into calm darkness. Imagine distant olive groves rippling in warm afternoon breezes, the pale hum of cicadas pulsing through shimmering golden air. Picture calm seas stretching out under a sky so wide and empty that it feels like slipping into infinity. You can smell the faint trace of wood smoke rising from quiet hearths, hear small bronze bells tinkling on goat necks far across sunlit hillsides. The gods themselves grow silent now, their thunder and seduction fading into the hush of sleep. You stand alone in an ancient stone courtyard lit by flickering oil lamps, the marble cool beneath your bare feet. A night breeze curls past, scented with thyme and myrrh, and you feel it brush across your cheek like a soft blessing. Let your breathing slow further still. Release any final tension clinging to your chest or hips or shoulders. Feel the night gather around you like a vast, dark cloak lined with downy feathers. Nothing is required of you here. You are safe. You are at rest. The moon rises silver and silent above old temple columns, the stars will overhead in patient circles, and your mind slips beyond their orbit into a place of quiet dreaming. There is only this soft, endless night. Only your breathing. Only peace.